Professor Mike, how are you? We miss you yesterday.
I'm doing very well, Hanadi. I'm sorry I couldn't make it yesterday,
No
but I'm here
problem,
today.
no problem. We're taking care about you, about
Thank
your
you.
sessions. Thank you so much. Now we will be presenting the next sessions. It's a practitioner session 4, best practices for entrepreneurial ecosystem. It's chairing by, can you chair the session, Professor Mike?
I don't have the schedule, but I can chair the
Yes,
schedule
yes.
as chair says.
I will send you the schedule now.
Okay.
There are 3 presenters. It's Kevin and Nazeh and Waild. Is Waild coming in? Sorry, and Tariq. The 3 of them, it's there. Kevin, you are the first, and I will text you, Professor Mike, okay?
Thank you.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on what part of the world you're in. Hello from Austin, Texas. It's my honor to be here with you to discuss best practices for entrepreneurial ecosystems. And with a perspective from Austin, Texas. I live in Austin, Texas, in the United States. And I want to talk a little bit about a model that we've been looking at and that we've been implementing for Austin. For those of you that don't know, Austin has an interesting background in that a lot of what has happened in Austin in a very short period of time, this town went from a sleepy university government town to one of the top entrepreneurial ecosystems in the world, and it sets some interesting tape. It sets the table for some interesting conversations about what might be implied by this for the world. Well, we'll go over very quickly. I know that we have a short period of time today, but Tech Ranch and our vision for the world. Economic disruption, what we see coming. In fact, this is a very apropos to be right after the sessions on artificial intelligence. I think there's an interesting tie-in between the two. Insights from the city of Austin. And then we'll talk about the big shift in economic development models that I see. And I don't know that a lot of parts of the world, I don't think, are shifting into the new models. And that's partially what I'm concerned with. Why enabling the entrepreneurs makes sense, and then a handful of key takeaways. Okay, a lot to talk about in a very short period of time, so I'll go a little bit fast, but I appreciate your participation. And for anyone that has questions for me, you can always go to techranch.com, and we can follow up with you. Just fill out our contact us form, and I'm happy to tell you more. And we also have a lot of free lectures and stuff like that. You're welcome to join us in as well. Tech Ranch is Austin's first privately funded incubator. I started Tech Ranch. I started the first business before it was called Tech Ranch 20 years ago in 2003. Very proud of our accomplishments, but probably the most important to me personally is to be recognized in the top 3 social impact incubators in the United States. Now, we do not use the word social impact. We use the words impact innovation, technology that solves some human need. Because my premise for what's happening, I'll tell a little bit more about in the next couple of slides. But the first thing I'll say is there's a stark warning from Detroit. Detroit used to be the technology capital of the world for 60 years. And then all of a sudden, in a very short period of time, Detroit ended up hitting a wall. And for those of you that know the history, especially during the years 2008, 2009, this was the most difficult part of the United States to be in, just because they had been on the top of the world from a technology perspective, but everything kind of stopped. In fact, that's what technology does, and especially when we look at the impact of some of the AI technologies that were just being discussed. Here's a few things. Why is it that we need a pioneer in this new world? Well, Netflix did not kill Blockbuster. Ridiculous late fees did. There's these shifts. Uber didn't kill the taxi business. Limited access to taxis did. Apple didn't kill the music industry. Having to buy full-length albums did. Amazon didn't kill retailers. There's this continual set of disruptions that are happening. Now, I would like to look at these disruptions that we see here. And in most cases, I think that these are very positive for the world. We're looking at new service models and things like that. In fact, but when we reflect on the different activities that are happening right now with new technologies, as well as the different just disruptions that are happening in the world of all different types, the shifts to electric vehicles, GM has announced no gas vehicles by 2035, AI and other tech disruptions. I'm not sure if someone's trying to say something, but I hear some background. So just go ahead and let me know if there's something that I should catch real quick. But I'll keep on going. Difficulties in the U.S.-China relationship. For those of us that are in business that don't play politics, this is causing a lot of different change. Then there's, President Biden has a lot of different policies to engage with that are shifting a lot of manufacturing activity to the U.S. and in North America, and then these trade opportunities. Well, in all of that, I think there's an interesting time that I want to take advantage of. I don't want this technical difficulty and these disruptions end up producing what happened in Detroit. I think that we're at a point in the world where we can actually do what's implied by William Gibson's quote. William Gibson is a science fiction writer, and he said the future's already here. It's not widely distributed yet. And my corollary on that, the Kevin Koym corollary on this idea, is all the world's problems have already been solved. It's just a matter of connecting the entrepreneur with a solution to the market with a problem. And with these simple words, I think they point to what's possible from what we've learned in the Austin model of entrepreneurship. Now, Austin went from what I said earlier, from very difficult place to start a company to one of the world's top in a matter of a couple of decades. And I can give a whole 8-hour set of presentations about the in-depth why this is and what happened and what matters and how we can take this model to the world. But the thing I want to hop into is merely just go to economic development models. The historical measures of economic development were the two things on the left: number of jobs created and the tax base. But the new measures that I think are emerging very fast are entrepreneurs and innovation and connectivity between ecosystems. And this last idea, especially as we start the shifting of the world in a massive way with the disruptions that are happening, I don't think we can talk enough about the connectivity between ecosystems and how fundamental this is going to be to the future that comes. Now, part of what Tech Ranch does is we build what we call venture bridges, bridging between different parts of the world, because if you truly believe the quote that I mentioned a little bit ago, that all the world's problems have already been solved, it's a matter of connecting entrepreneurs and markets, then this final column here of this new measure is a fundamental idea. And this is partially why. These large organizations like Cemex or Dell or any of the large corporations, they have access to markets. They can spend and quickly get there. But the truth is that they're not anywhere near as innovative as these early stage firms. And the difficulty that we have is a lot of times to find, promote, select, discover, and then scale these earlier stage firms is the most fundamental difficulty. If we can do that, then as these disruptions are emerging, we can respond to them very quickly. And so what we actually talk about is building the connective tissue between different parts of the world. In my case, in the last 6.5 years, I've been in 28 different countries. Each one of these visits in each country was to start bringing a little bit more connective tissue around this, about how do we find these early stage firms that then can solve these fundamental problems in each area, especially as this acceleration of disruption occur. Again, there's a lot of extra things that can be said about this slide alone, about this, creating this set of loose ties across the world. For those of you all that have read the research paper, Loose Ties, There's a research paper that talks about this that came out about 15 years ago. But part of what I did was use that as a model about how do we create these loose ties between these ecosystems regionally, and then help these earlier stage firms that have these solutions for the different regions gain access to those markets. And, you know, bridging cultures, bridging markets, bridging needs. It's quite an interesting opportunity. And I'm convinced that for the future that comes, especially as we engage in further disruptions, this will be essential to do. A few things, a few takeaways. And again, in a very short period of time, it's difficult for me to just say, hey, these are all the different pieces, but I just want to give you kind of a taste. You know, the whole process of training people in entrepreneurial thinking at all levels. In the past, entrepreneurial thinking was kind of held for the C-suite of the corporation. We really need to have this all the way through an organization. In fact, you see this in a number of universities that are leading with teaching about entrepreneurial thinking and that type of work. The second thing is really studying the early adopter process. Now, the picture on this column is the technology adoption life cycle. But part of what I'm actually really pointing to about this is how do we engage in early adopter conversations? Early adopter conversations are what really drive this. Now, for me, this happens to be something very personal in that in 1994, when I started my first company, my first startup, my first customer for that startup was a bank in Mexico, one country away, 1,500 miles from my home. I was able to gain access to the Mexican market for this specific new tool that I had built. Part of the thing that we've learned, and part of what I actually see is a solution about bridging regional ecosystems, is figuring out how do we not just have a bridge and send delegations back and forth, but engage in the early adopter conversation. Then with one of my colleagues that's based out of Santiago, Chile, he has a book called How to Achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, where he focuses on what he calls extreme collaboration. There are lots of parts of the world that historically have chosen not to work together for a different set of reasons, political or what it might be. We're at a point now that even if the world is so connected, that extreme collaboration, as Leonardo talks about in this book, is kind of an essential tool about figuring out what are the alignments, because at the end of the day, all humans are aligned on the planet at some level. We all seek similar type of things. And so how do we create those alignments? This book and the whole set of practices that Leonardo has developed are quite interesting. And you see these taking off across South America. I think that this is part of the tools that we need to take to the world. And then 10 types of innovation for those of us that have gotten, and I know many of you have gotten to study innovation like I have as well. Part of what we're looking at is how is it that we can engage this, not just in the corporations and, the engineering departments of the world, but how can we engage this across each stage of each possible engagement of innovation? And then finally, there is a place for regional policies. There is a place that us tech entrepreneurs need to lead the politicians into the space to support what's coming, because a lot of times I think we've seen this in many different parts of the world, including here in Austin, Texas, that the technology is leading politics and leading legal structures. And we need to make sure that these legal structures are aligned and are quickly catching up to where the technology is taking us, so that we can actually harvest out of it for the betterment of the world. We've kind of gone over a number of different things very quickly, and I appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate that you've allowed me to kind of hit on a bunch of different subjects that would be helpful for the world that I see is coming, especially as we look at how we can craft entrepreneurial ecosystems. And the main thing I'd like to say is, through this, it's my honor to be here with you today. My biggest concern is that we use these disruptive technologies in these disruptive times to make the world a better place. So with that, I'll close by saying, let's go change the world for the better together. Thank you very much for this opportunity. If you'd like to get a hold of me, my email is kevin@techranch.com, also kevin@techranchaustin.com. Please let us know if you have any other questions. You're welcome to go to techranch.com and fill out our contact us form. For anyone that hears what I'm talking about and would like to follow up as well, you can send us an email. You can send me an email or otherwise. So thank you. I think I heard someone speaking. I could take a question or two if there's time, but I think there was someone else that said something a while ago.
Kevin, I was just going to add, you brought up in very beginning here something I think that was a very good point. The disruptors that you listed there, and there were 6 or 7 of them that you listed there, what they really did was they found opportunities where the current market was very inefficient. And by using technology, they were able to make it much more efficient. Taxi cab drivers didn't lose their business because Uber came in, but rather taxis were extremely inefficient, and Uber saw a need there. And today, Uber is extremely efficient. The reason I wasn't here yesterday was I happened to be in Austin, Texas, and I was at my daughter's house, and I had to be at the airport. I pushed some buttons on Uber. 5 minutes later, the Uber driver was there, and I easily made it on time to the airport. Retailing was done in a relatively inefficient manner too. Especially people said, well, look, there are products that I buy routinely, so I don't have to see them and feel them and touch them. I know what the products are. So Jeff Bezos saw a need that could have easily been filled, and now practically, especially since the COVID problem, people now use Amazon and other competitors that have come into the market very routinely. So we use the term disruptors, and they have disrupted the way the normal practices are done, but it was because the normal practices hadn't evolved and hadn't accepted technology and newer techniques that created the opportunity for these disruptors to come in. I thought that is a very profound point. Most people tend to blame the disruptors. They ruined this, but they really didn't do that. They looked where there was opportunities and where there was a lot of inefficiency, and they were able to fill that in and become very successful.
I totally agree. The main thing about it is, and in fact, in the examples that I chosen for that slide, is to recognize the inefficiencies that technology and other packaging around how to innovate was brought together for the purposes of good responses. Of course, there's an ethic that's being expressed in each one of those. There's a value system and an ethic that's being expressed. The main thing that I'd like to see as well is that as we build this future together, that we hold to an ethic that is forward-looking like that. Obviously, with some of the AI technologies that were just being spoken about, there's some really bad ways that those technologies could be applied as well. And so part of the thing that I think is essential, and especially why it makes sense for us to bind together and build what I call venture bridges across the world, is so that we can support technologies that have ethics that really serve the world, serve people. There's so many examples about how disruptions and technologies could be used in really negative ways, especially now with the advent of AI alone. We can see lots of different ways how that could be used in quite horrible ways. And so I think you're right on about each one of the examples, and we just have to be cognizant of how we work together so that that doesn't happen, so that there's not some isolated set of capabilities that happen that are put into hands that have bad intentions for the world. It could be that we're at a moment that can truly be the birth of something new and truly amazing. And we have a responsibility as technology entrepreneurs to see that that serves the world.
So considering that some of these disruptions could be negative, do you see a role for the government with regulations and things being involved here? You know, typically regulations are needed, but they tend to slow down a lot of this innovation. So is there a certain kind of place that government should be to ensure that or to help ensure that some of the negative parts aren't there, but not too aggressive so that they tend to slow down innovation?
I think there is a role, and I'll tell you that I absolutely don't think it's my area of expertise to tell you how governments should play. It's only been recently in my career that some of the governments that we've worked with have engaged us and asked us those kind of questions. I've given some recent speeches, but around that, as well as we have foreign governments that have engaged our systems. The truth is that part of what myself, since I come from a technology entrepreneur background, is to figure out how do we set this set of conditions up so that positive things result in the first place. And it's not that I don't mean to punt on the question about the governments, but I'll tell you quite literally that I don't know how to control that and affect that as much as having entrepreneurs that are positively working with each other and have a positive result out of that. I can give you a lot of different examples that, especially in healthcare, we've got examples where we've had Texas and Mexican and Italian and Egyptian entrepreneurs that have worked together around a set of concerns in healthcare that, because these earlier stage firms were working with each other, they produced outcomes that wouldn't have been possible just in the past. And the ethic that gets expressed by that is getting more access to healthcare to people that are underserved or not served in the first place, which I think is really essential to see for the future. So, yes, government plays a role. There's probably another expert that's in the in this group of experts that can really speak to that. But I think that we can bind together and create an ethic with each other that serves the world in a profound way, just by organizing our entrepreneurs together.
Thanks, Kevin. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, and I know the
no worries. I'm happy.
Excuse me, Mike.
Government is difficult. Yes.
Excuse me, Mike. Engineer Tariq, he have other meeting. If he can participate, and we leave open discussion the last 15 minutes. If you don't mind, please. Thank you so much, Kevin. Thank you so much, Professor Mike.
Okay, so who's next here? Emery?
Tariq.
Okay. Oh, here it is, Nazeh. Okay. Please proceed.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm just sharing my screen, yes.
Okay.
My screen is visible. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Hennadi, for giving me this opportunity to present my work at this forum. My name is Dr. Tariq Umar, and I'm a senior lecturer in construction project management. And the work which I'm presenting today is related to the future of cities and how to make them sustainable. So just to give a quick outline of my presentation. So it will include an introduction, the research which I have done on the topic, and the method which I have used, and then it will be followed by some result analysis and then discussion. At the end, I will present a conclusion, and then if there is an opportunity, I will have a quick question and answer session. Right. So obviously, we know the Earth population is increasing, and because of that, it's putting a lot of pressure on the Earth resources. And the fact is that many people want to live in cities. And obviously there is reason why the people want to live in the cities, because it provides better lifestyle opportunities, facilities, and obviously better lifestyle and opportunities. And then this basically increase the population of the cities as well. If you look at the data, so obviously there has been an increase in the population in the cities, but after that, that increase steadily increased. A sharp increase come in 2018. And obviously that increase then resulted into a number of social and environmental challenges. Right. So let's know the challenge. So obviously, so we know the challenge that there are social and environmental issues which is created by the increased population in cities. So the purpose of this research, which I have undertaken, was to develop some solution for to face the challenges of urbanization. And obviously the solution should be robust. So that should be able to tackle the current issues and obviously looking into the long term. But before to propose that solution, obviously we need to understand the context of sustainability when it's come to cities. So the question is, why cities? Why the focus should be on cities only, and why to make them sustainable? Because obviously more population on the Earth's surface mean more requirement. And if you look at to the projection, so by 2030, 5 billion of the Earth population will live in cities. So the expansion of the current cities will be more. If you look at to the current requirement, so we need at least 6 Earth to meet those requirement, the current requirement. And if you look at to what is the outcome in terms of waste or environmental issues, as I mentioned, so the city itself generates 70% of the total waste. And also it's utilize 70% of the Earth resources. For example, we take the example of energy. And if you look at to the cities, obviously they are located mostly near to the coastal area. So they are more affected by the impact which is coming from the climate change, global warming, and obviously sea rise. So the cities are more at risk. While there are different solutions, so what we need to do in terms of solutions, obviously, we can utilize the underground spaces, we can make tall buildings, and we can also make cities in ocean. My focus is basically to look at to the perspective of making cities in ocean. And the factor which I have considered is obviously how to design those cities, what would be the material of construction, because I'm a civil engineer, so I'm more interested in that aspect. And obviously when we look at to the sustainability indicator, so what is important in terms of energy, water, waste, mobilities, and obviously habitat regeneration. So what I have done, so obviously the focus of those cities is to, this research is to make the cities, or look at to the feasibilities of making cities in ocean. And obviously, if you look at why ocean, the question is obviously, if you look at to the Earth, so the general understanding is that 70% is basically occupied by ocean. And that was basically the goal of this research. So a number of research approaches has been incorporated. Both qualitative and quantitative research approaches has been used. Obviously, academic will be able to understand more better than that, but I don't want to go in detail in terms of qualitative and quantitative. And obviously, I look at to the existing literature, get the key information from the literature, and then I look at to what could be the potential sustainability indicator, or let's say the most important sustainability indicator. When I was looking to the literature, so I look at to some of the literature published in 2010 to 2019. A systematic approach has been adopted. After that, obviously, I interviews and I use a questionnaire. I try to get or collect the data from the experts in this area. So just presenting the result of the finding, the data which I have collected. So after analysis of the data, I try to classify the key sustainability factors or element. I categorize them based on the data which has been collected. So obviously it's include energy, water, food, waste, mobility, and habitat regeneration. And then that was the ranking of those sustainability indicator. I also asked the participant that, is it the floating cities or the cities in ocean can be potential solution for the cities? So majority of them, they responded as yes. Now, the way we produce energy or the way we use them is obviously non-sustainable. So what we need to do, we need to reduce that quite significantly. And if we reduce it, let's say to 31 kilowatt hour, then this can come from different sources. For what purposes we are going to use, and then how we are going to produce. Obviously, we use for housing, we use it for agricultures and stuff like that. How they are going to be generated? So obviously the renewable sources, including solar, wind, ocean, and experimental energies or production of energy will be the main source to produce that energy requirement or to meet that energy requirement. Then obviously water is important for life and for human. We need not only for drinking purpose, but also for other industrial and food production purposes. Again, the way we are using the water, so it's again non-sustainable. So we need to reduce the consumption of water. And then we need to bring that to 583 liter per capita per day. And it will be used for different purposes. I don't want to go in that detail, but the water which can be coming from different sources, obviously, there will be a systematic ways to meet those requirements. The second aspect which I consider was the food. So how much food consumption a human need and what kind of food basically we eat. So I look at to that as well. And then what kind of food. So apart from how much we need, what we need. So in terms of proteins and stuff like that. So I look at to that as well. And how that requirement can be met if a city is made in ocean. So obviously indoor farming, outdoor farming, there is a possibility to use the ocean farming and aquaponic and aeroponic process to produce those food. Yeah, as I mentioned, that is the requirement for that. It's just an example to demonstrate what I mean by outdoor farming and indoor farming and what could be the aeroponic and aquaponic and outdoor farming as well. Again, the waste, so the way we produce the waste is quite a lot. If you look at to the GCC region, so obviously we are one of the top waste producer. And when we look at to the waste, obviously, it's not just the waste, it's have negative consequences as well. So obviously the emission which is coming from this waste is also significant. So we need to reduce the waste, and then we need to do the recycling or retreatment of the waste which we are producing. So if it is a solid waste, obviously that need to be properly treated. Yeah, so this is just an existing scenario, how much waste we are producing globally and how we are disposing that. So majority of the waste is still going to landfill, and when it's go to landfills, obviously it's create a number of environmental issues. In terms of the cities, to make them sustainable, it can be applicable to the existing city, but if you look at to the future cities, if it is going to be built in oceans, obviously we need to have a proper collection system. We need to have an exchange hub, which we can separate different types of waste. And we need to have a community compost garden. Obviously, the people participation will be important. And we need to have different types of treatment system to make those waste reusable or recyclable. Okay, then the mobility. So obviously we need to think in a different way. We are talking about making cities in oceans. Obviously, it's not only to be one cities, there will be different cities, and then how that will be connected with each other. So obviously, in terms of sustainability, we need to reduce the number of cars. But when it's come to the floating cities, obviously we need to think about the alternative mode of transportation, and that transportation should have different approaches or different method of transportation. I mean, even using the cycles, but for short distances, and we need to utilize the electric car and electric boat to move from one place to another place, because cities or the towns, if it is developed in the ocean, will be connected in that way. Habitat regeneration. So obviously, when it's come to the materials, obviously there is a potential use of materials which is normally created, I would say self-created in the ocean, which is called biorock, because we need to have a strong foundation for these cities. So one of the main important material which can be used to construct the floating cities, and obviously we need to look at the protection of those cities. So we need to make sure that the cities, because they will be in the ocean, so that need to be protected from the flooding and things like that. So obviously the bio rock will be one of the most important element that can be utilized in the protection and the development or construction of the floating cities. Right. Just coming to the concluding remarks. So obviously we have a problem, and the problem, it might not be at this stage, but we are going to face this problem in the future. If we don't face it, our new generation will face it. We are talking about life in Mars. It will take a long time. So we need an immediate solution. So I think before going to the Mars, or before leaving the Mars, I think we need to think about what we can do on our Earth. And as I said, sustainable cities are global priorities. The current cities are not able to meet the current requirements. Obviously, we need to think about the alternative. So we need to make sure that the existing cities are sustainable, but we also need to think about out of box and how to make new cities and how to make them sustainable. Now, the concept of the floating cities or the cities in ocean is quite complex, but it is not something which is not doable. And obviously, there need to be kind of big collaboration in this area. This is the end of my presentation. We'll be able to answer your question if have any, and you can also access to me or reach to me through my email, my social media account. I have a web link as well. So if you want to go there and try to get my contact or mobile number or telephone number, is also available there. Thank you very much for your attention. And that's it. Let me stop sharing this.
Well, thank you, Tariq. I found that to be very fascinating. I think we have one more paper, so let me just ask one quick question. I imagine these cities will have to be built fairly close to the coast of a country, right? So we're going to have to deal with that. And I saw that you had roads built in there, so it won't be something like Venice where you have to get around in water. You would actually have roads as part of the city too. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And I think from an engineering standpoint, I know that's your expertise. This can probably be done. But as you mentioned, there seems to be a host of other problems that we'll have to deal with. The city won't be completely sustainable, so they'll have to get some products from the coast, and they'll have to be shipped. Okay, thank you so much. Hanadi, we have one more paper here. Is that correct?
Yes, please. Nazeh.
Nazeh.
Yes, Nazeh, present yourself, please.
Nazeh bin Ammar. Hi, everybody. I'd like to thank Dr. Hamadi al-Mubaraki that allowed me to be
Nazeh, your mic, your voice is not clear. Maybe you are away from the mic.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
That's
your
good.
voice now is very clear.
All right. So I would like to thank you, Dr. Hanadi, for giving me this opportunity to be among this great team that made the presentation since yesterday. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Great. Thanks again. So I would like to share my experience during this great conference on innovation technology. My experience as an engineer that graduated with a master's degree from Stanford University with a double major in engineering from Purdue University. That was in the beginning of the 90s. I have more than 26 years of experience in entrepreneurship, mainly in Tunisia, but also abroad. I'm a member of a network of business angels in Africa, MENA region, and the Mediterranean Sea. I will be very happy to share with you this presentation about the best practices for entrepreneurial ecosystem. It will be less academic than what I have seen until now. It's more of experience sharing. I consider these are the major factors that can make an ecosystem, an entrepreneurial ecosystem work. That we need first that the environment has to be like an open innovation approach from everybody, from the government, from the professors, universities, and then talking more about the sponsorship earlier to have this discussion about how far does the government has to get involved in entrepreneurial ecosystems. The role of universities, coming from Purdue and from Stanford, I have seen the role of the universities in helping the ecosystem develop. Coming from a country that is sitting in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea, but it's also North Africa, we need definitely to talk about access to technology, access to data, which is, I consider that as a major factor in making research, in doing benchmarking, in knowing about the market, the worldwide market. And these are the musts in order to build up an entrepreneurial ecosystem. This is the figure that I found that is very interesting, which shows how the interdependencies on all the factors that I was talking about, that I'll be talking about in my presentation later on, how all these factors are intermingled one to another. And we really need all these outputs, the inputs. What do we want to do with either innovative SMEs or with startups in order to develop the new economy? We need the talents. Talents can come from the university, but also from high schools, from wherever. The knowledge, access to knowledge. Now it's much easier with the internet or new economies. Support. Is there a demand? And I'll be more talking about the demand for the local market, but worldwide, and especially in Tunisia. We are very much open towards Europe, but we are lucky to be also open towards the MENA region and Africa. How good are the physical infrastructures, internet and others? The culture and the habits of the economies in these countries, and the formal institutions, the network, and the leadership. What are the must-haves? Data access. And in Tunisia, if I take an example of Tunisia, even neighboring countries in other parts of the world for our startups. And this is the role of the ecosystem to gather and to help finding the necessary data in order to get the knowledge and to see if there is a real opportunity in order to go ahead or with no go for a startup. Regarding human capital, in Tunisia, this is a factor that is, we are glad and we are happy to say we are exporting a lot of human capital. It's unfortunate, on the other hand, we have many engineers, ITs, medical doctors, in general, in the health sector, many who are leaving because of the economical situation in Tunisia, which leaves some startups with less capabilities of finding the right people in order to develop their startups. The legal aspect, the legislation in Tunisia about in 2018, we had this, what we call, especially with tax incentives, increase their numbers and allow Tunisia to be more attractive with this startup act. We started, myself as a founding member of Carthage Business Angels and an incubator called Wikistart. We started just after the revolution in 2011. We did extremely well even before the legislation. The legislation has to be there, but it's much more the opportunity of investing in startups that can help than tax incentives. And this is my general impression. We have also through this Startup Act, we give labels to startups. Some of them are doing extremely well right now, even for a small economy like Tunisia. What we also need is the general environment, which by that I mean all what we can see, including the economy, which will be the next component, in order to have an ecosystem that can be interesting, not only for the local investors, but for foreign investors. And by the way, in Tunisia, we have very, very successful startups that did extremely well in AI, which is the largest, the biggest startup that is Tunisian and based also in England and in Europe, which is called Instadeep, which is the AI arm of BioNTech. That we have some others like Expensia and Xprotein, My Wardrobe, and many others that have such an environment where they were able not only to be to start in Tunisia, but also they opened up to Europe mainly, and hopefully in the next coming years we can see more startups that will stay local, but also that will open up to Africa, but especially with the MENA region. Just to give you an idea, among the 1,000 startups that we have about 700 or 800 who have the label, but 25 among these startups are foreign startups. And now we hope through the Startup Act 2.0, there will be more incentive to have more foreign startups in Tunisia. The reason will be in order to develop the business, in order to have the prototype. Tunisia remains very, very attractive with its engineers, with its technicians, with its IT engineers. And we hope through the ANAVA, which is the fund of funds, which is encouraging a lot to have foreign investment in Tunisia. The legislation was not very encouraging in the past, but in the future, I think with hands off from the Tunisian central bank, there will be more and more foreign investors, VCs, business angels, that can benefit from about 70 co-working spaces. We have about 8 accelerators, 7 incubators, 10 investors, and there will be many more investing opportunities in Tunisia. The major players in Tunisia, as I was talking about the incubators, the accelerators, but we also have very, very interesting research centers. In my experience with Carthage Business Angels and Wiki Startup is a program that was funded by USAID and the GIZ, the German corporation, is a program called Univenture. Univenture was, we were able to go to research centers, to universities, and we have developed this ingredient, which is the entrepreneurial ingredient, with researchers who didn't really think that they can succeed in this wide world of startups, because they be in their research centers. They were very happy with what they were doing, but they really didn't know that there could be an opportunity to go into industry and get out of their comfort zones. Since I would say 2011, there are some anchor organizations that are helping also develop the ecosystem in Tunisia, and other institutions, governmental and non-governmental institutions that helped up to level up the entrepreneurial ecosystem. As you might think, in Tunisia, the real challenge is the financial support. Access to finance is one of the most difficult things that we have. And I do believe that through conferences like this, when we open up to people who are sitting now in Austin, others who are in Kuwait, and I've seen many speakers who are from the Middle East and from England and elsewhere. There could be great synergy between the possibilities of countries like ours in Tunisia and in Africa in general. The love of money is something that it's in our habits. We have always been very close Mediterranean families. We have very, very close friends. But as soon as we get into business angels, we didn't have business angel network until Carthage Business Angel, which was established in 2011. And we have had the challenge to explain what's a business angel, how he can look at the exit, what are the risks, what are the possibilities.
You seem to be having some problems with your internet connection. Things have frozen.
Until now, we don't have more than 100 wannabe business angels, and they don't even know how business angel organization averse than before. We see more and more institutional investors, and with Anava, we will see more VCs. We need also to give enough support to our business angels, to the VCs, to understand how we can evaluate startups. Hopefully, we will see more exits in the coming months and coming years. And we need to talk more about the success stories about Tunisia, and we need to do more storytelling, to talk about the ecosystem of Tunisia, where we helped about 10 other countries in Africa who copied our Startup Act, and we are very proud to share that with our friends both in Africa and the Middle East. The must-haves, given the size of the market, If we don't have this international approach, the Tunisian ecosystem will remain extremely small. And I'm very glad to say that Tunisia has been always open up to the Mediterranean Sea, to European countries. I would say less North America and less Asia, but definitely to Africa and to the Middle East. Tax incentives can help, and it's helping investors to make some deals with startups. We have less spin-offs, unfortunately. We didn't see these large groups helping startups come out of their programs. Market access is a large issue. We have some startups who are doing extremely well, but given that they don't have this opportunity of traveling or going abroad to let the other markets know about their funding or their innovative products, that will be a must, and we need to find some means as the ecosystem to help these startups to get access to market. As I was saying earlier, we are also working on cross investment to Tunisia. We have much better mentors and experts in helping the startups in different fields. I would love to see more experts in the deep tech, helping up the startups. We have very good university level, but it will be great if we can have some more overseas expertise, either from professor or industry experts. The network events, we have made it, but it's much more concentrated in the capital in Tunis, and we need more network events to show to everybody that it's to become an entrepreneur. It's just either you have it or you don't have it, but if the others have done it, maybe you can succeed. The side factors for diversity and success, I do believe that gender incentives have to be there. By the way, we have about 16% of our startups are women. We have 52% of the engineers are women. We are the second best ratio in the world. We need to work.
Nazeh, yes. I hate to interrupt, and this is extremely important and interesting. However, we're 6 minutes over, and the next session's about to start. Okay. So wrap it up in the next 30 seconds or so. That'd be great.
Okay, I will do that. We need to go more into the regional inside the country, because most of
Okay, you seem to have frozen up with the internet. So we're going to have to call an end to this session because we have another one that's, as I say, late. So there was a bunch of questions I would have liked to ask too, but again, we're out of time. I think access to capital is really the critical path here that virtually all these systems are going to have to work on.
We need to look with water, with energy, social, in order to work on social entrepreneurial business in Tunisia. Things to avoid. What we have is the issue about the heavy regulation. We have tough foreign investments. We have a lot of foreign institutions who are helping up with in Tunisia. The perennity of the ecosystems has to be there. Without these foreign investors, we need to do the same thing in other regions. We need to avoid bureaucracy. We need to work on IP, which is something that is very costly in Tunisia. I'm not going to add more into that. I would like to thank you again. Sorry for this delay.
No, thank you, Nazeh. That was very interesting. We're ready to move on to the next session. Hanadi, who's the first speaker?
Yes, the next session should be sharing by Christy. You can take it, Professor Mike, till Christy is joining.
Okay.
And the first presenter is Charles. Just we've been in contact with Charles.